Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid. But today is Monday, the 17th of July 2023, and these are the stories that we'll try to decipher a bit during the course of our show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the latest as far as the situation concerning Pakistan's security and the outfits that are trying to create havoc in Pakistan is concerned. Defense Minister Khaja Asif Saab has taken strong exception to Afghanistan on Saturday for violating the crucial obligations agreed upon in Doha. He has on Twitter rebuked the neighboring country for neglecting its duties and not abiding by its commitment to prevent the use of Afghan soil for terror activities. But at the same time, Zabiullah Mujahid also, while talking to BBC Pashto, says that the TTP has no foundation in Afghanistan, that is, it's not present in Afghanistan. And he also made the assertion that the Doha deal was made with the United States and not with Pakistan, although it did say that Pakistan was a brotherly country. Where is all of this leading to? What does happen as far as the TTP and the Afghan interim government's involvement with it is concerned? We'll be talking about that in detail during the course of our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the fourth Global Climate and SDG Synergy Conference that is being convened by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs and the United Nations Framework Conference on Climate Change. From the Pakistani side, we have a Prime Minister's Special Assistant and Convener of the National Parliamentary Task Force on Sustainable Development Goals, Rumina Khurshid Alam, who's there, who's talking and discussing the climate change and Pakistan's perspective on it. We'll be highlighting that and more in our second segment. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, today concerns the flood-like situation in different areas of Pakistan. At least 300 families of more than 220 villages in Pakpatan and Arif Wala have been evacuated as the River Sutlej experienced a moderate flood. Of course, the water does recede, but then there are other dangers that accumulate in the days to come because of these incessant rains that are happening. Also, Azad Jammu and Kashmir has issued an alert regarding the possibility of floods in various parts of the region. Our last story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the grain deal that was agreed upon between Russia and Ukraine with the mediation of Turkey. Now, it is being said by the Russian side that it was suspending its participation in this crucial deal that allowed the export of Ukrainian grain. Of course, a lot depends on this deal because of the food security situation, and the suspension of this deal might cause a lot of issues concerning all the different countries that were receiving this grain. We will be talking about that in our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the terrorism that is emanating from the Afghan soil into Pakistan. If we remember well, Amir Muttaqi, who is the interim foreign minister of Afghanistan, had said in his very first statement that the Afghan soil will never be used against any neighborhood country, and that includes Pakistan. Nevertheless, the incursion of different outfits, including the TTP, from the Afghan soil is nothing new since the statement came about. But the fact also remains that Afghanistan, despite giving guarantees on various occasions, has yet to give a solid evidence of stopping activities of the TTP in Pakistan. We've been joined to talk more about this by Brigadier Retired Shahid Jagir Sahab. He's a senior analyst. He joins us in the studio. Brigadier Sahab, it's a pleasure to have you here for this very important story. Let's begin without further ado, and let's talk about this. First of all, this attack that occurred in Balochistan in two places, then again in a Kant area of Job, but of course there was a retaliation by the forces. What is all of this indicating? Why is there an increase in such activities since the last few months?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for inviting me for my views on the issue. As far as your question goes, you see, Pakistan is a country which is strategically very important at the global level. And now, with the present obtaining environment, has gained added significance when it is linked with the CPAC. And the present crunch we are facing in the economy, and everyone is all the heads are together to put it on the right track. This incident, an increased incident rather of the TPP in Balochistan, in KPK and other parts of the country indicates that our enemies do not want a stabilized Pakistan, where it can improve its economy, it can look after its people.
But you know, Brigadier Sahib, you say that our enemies do not want Pakistan to be stabilized. But this is not what Afghanistan is saying. Afghanistan says that Pakistan is a brotherly country. Should we consider Afghanistan as somebody as a country that is working against Pakistan interests? Or should we say that there are other interests that are using Afghanistan against Pakistan?
Yes. Afghanistan is our brotherly country. We have given lot of sacrifices for Afghanistan. But Afghanistan is now in the present shape. You know, in terms of men, material, economy, and the world outlook of Pakistan. We have all sacrificed for our Afghan brothers. But when the statement like this comes, it raises a benefit of doubt. You know, if you see the joint declaration between Afghanistan and USA, it consists of 4 parts. And the first part is, I read out, guarantees to prevent the use of Afghan soil by any international terrorist group or individual against the security of the United States and its allies. Right? It further explains that Islamic Republic of Afghanistan reaffirms its continued commitment not to cooperate with or permit international terrorist groups or individuals to recruit, train, raise funds, transit Afghanistan or misuse its internationally recognized documents or conduct other support activities in Afghanistan and will not host them. Now, this is very important. And that is what was probably meant by our defense minister and the other PPP leader, Babar Saab, explained with that. It has to ensure that the Afghan government has to ensure that they do not host them. They take practical measures to control them or evict them from there. So, that is what we are asking for.
But that is what has not happened since 2021. Isn't that the case?
It is not happening. Under the obtaining environment, we understand, Pakistan do understand the weak security system that Afghanistan has, the problem of resources which Afghanistan has for the law and order. But at the same time, let's not forget this thing, that a brotherly country never allows its own soil to be used by the people, those who are attacking your neighboring brotherly countries, and especially the country which is hosting 10 million refugees till now, despite its all economic problems.
But Brigadier Sahib, the fact also remains that Afghanistan completely denies the presence of TTP in Afghanistan. Why is that so, when there is concrete proof otherwise?
No, look, we have shared with them the intelligence. We have shared with them the conversation. Now, totally denying it is absolutely, is not acceptable. And under the present environment, it has become a vital national interest of us that we cannot afford these terrorist activities in our country. And that is what the Army Chief General Asim and the Prime Minister has very categorically said.
Even in the Corps Commanders Conference, that was said by the Chief of the Army Staff.
It is threatening our national security. Whenever something is being done by Pakistan to get the foreign direct investment, to get the economy on the right track, the TPP becomes active. So, now, second thing is what you are saying is, in a culture like Afghanistan, it's not possible that the Taliban are absolutely aloof of the presence of the TPP, because it's a so introvert looking culture that having served in FATA, one can very clearly say that even in a village, the animals are counted. When the animal of one village goes to another village, they know it is not the animal of. What to talk about the people? You can't say that these people belong to this village.
So, in your point of view, Brigadier Saab, is the Afghan interim government is it abiding by the Doha Agreement, or was it just a piece of paper for them?
No, I think Afghans are our brothers. They don't want anything going wrong with Pakistan. But I think that due to their ideological convergence with the TPP, they at this time, when they do not have resources, when they do not have, so they don't want to open up another front in their own country. But they have to make a decision. They have to draw a red line. If they have relations with the TPP people, they have to draw the red line that, okay, you can, I mean, don't go beyond this. Don't attack Pakistan. Do not do your activities in Pakistan. That is what Pakistan wants. And if at all they do not want, they must come to Pakistan, sit with us, and we can jointly take an action against them. Exchange the human intelligence, and exchange the electronic intelligence, and jointly can work.
But you know, you can only jointly work with a government when it acknowledges the presence of a terrorist organization within its soil. It is not acknowledging the presence of TTP. It says that TTP is a purely Pakistani problem and Pakistan needs to deal with it. On the other hand, I'd like to understand another perspective at all. Doha deal, the deal that you gave excerpts from just a few moments back. The Afghan interim government says that the Doha deal was made with the US and not with Pakistan. So anything concerning the Doha deal will be discussed with the United States and not with Pakistan. When it was in fact Pakistan, because of whose efforts this Doha deal came into effect, is in your point of view the Afghan interim government turning a new leaf as far as its relationship with Pakistan, or acknowledging Pakistan's efforts is concerned?
Look, I would say that one, they are passing on their burden. They are not in a proper position to control the TPP. They are passing on the burden. The second thing is probably they are taking the advantage of point 4 of part 1. The point 4 of part 1 says the United States commits to facilitate discussion between Pakistan and Afghanistan to work out arrangement to ensure each other country's security, neither each other country's security is threatened by action from territory of the both sides. So probably they are taking the cover of this. But the fact of the matter is that they have committed that they will not allow their soil to be used by any terrorist organization against another country. And especially, I'm surprised in this thing, and especially with a country like Pakistan, which has compromised on its own interest to help out the Afghanistan. Whatever the shape of the Afghanistan today is, if you read the Analyst of 80s and late 80s and 70s, mid 70s, you find the things like, what would have been if the USSR would have been there in Afghanistan? What would have been the shape of the world if USSR would have got into the warm water and the table of the great game would have turned toward them? So I personally feel that we have sacrificed a lot, but they must see from the prison of their neighbors. Neighbors are never.
But the fact remains that, to be very honest, I don't think that the Afghan interim government is seeing things from the Pakistani prism. They are seeing things from their very own prism, and they disregard any such presence of terrorist outfits on its own soil that is working against the interests of Pakistan. Now let's come to Operation Zarb-e-Azb, Operation Raddul Fasad, two major operations that were to root out all such elements, including the TTP, from the Pakistani soil. Our armed forces succeeded immensely as a result of these two operations. How did the TTP manage to regroup and return with again causing such nefarious activities in Pakistan after a period of 3 years?
Look, there's a saying, the friend of your friend is your friend, and the vice versa. So when the Afghanistan and Pakistan was getting out of this, and we were at the concluding end of the Afghan war, our enemies created an organization out of the Talibans, which were to be used today. We know, we used to think of this, but today we know that they are being used as a proxy against Pakistan. And especially, I would not hesitate to name India in this, and its present, riding on the ladder with the help of US to be the regional head. And their analysts very openly talk about it. It's not a secret. They talk. The retired army officers talk about it. Their analysts talked about it. That why not to use the TPP? And who is, by the way, who is funding the TPP?
That is a huge question, isn't it?
Okay. Who is arming them? Who is training them? Taliban may be giving them the manpower, but who is giving them the fund? That nobody questions that. In the FATA, we were held victim of the terrorism, but in the Financial Action Task Force, the India is not asked question, despite our concrete evidence of that. We still have their monkey with us. I would very openly say, who says that, yes, I am a serving officer of the Indian Navy. Okay? And the world is not ready to listen to that.
All right. Is the world ready to help Pakistan press on the Afghan government to act against such terrorist elements such as the TTP, of which we have ample proof, and we have given, as you yourself have also said, ample proof to the Afghan interim government of their presence on their soil?
Look, nations always see, big nations always see their own interest supreme. And especially the US and the world see their problem as the world problem. And they do not see anybody else's problem as the world problem. Okay? Now that is the issue which they have. US in the West looks towards the South Asia from the prism of containment of China. Until the time they will keep seeing it from the prism of containment of China, and what light the India throw in that prism, probably it will remain the same for the time to come.
All right. So let's wait and see. I mean, that is what I can say. But nevertheless, as our Chief of the Army Staff also in today's core commanders conference has emphasized and has talked about this very presence of elements in Pakistan from the Afghan soil. I think it is high time that the Afghan interim government also helps Pakistan, whether it is willing or not, but definitely help Pakistan in at least containing these elements within their territories and not let them percolate inside our territory.
I think it is also the high time that we must draw our red lines politically and militarily. One. Second, the analysis which people sitting who do not know about the environment, who do not know about the terrain between Pakistan and Afghanistan, they make a drawing room analysis. you know. So, there is a requirement for a joint strategy of all the parties to sit together, form a policy that how we are going to go
and abide by that policy. I think
and put it in place, put it in place, monitor it, watch it. The intelligence based operations needs to go on, you know, and then it is very important that you make the resources available to the civil law enforcement agencies. If you have in one police station, if you have 10 people posted over there and 6 are employed on the protocol duties, the 4 will not be able to do the work which they are supposed to do. Second, the political consensus has to come in. Army has given its consensus today in the shape of Corps Commanders Conference. The political consensus have to come in, that what are the red lines that the Afghanistan has to abide by.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Brigadier Shahid Jagir Sahab, Senior Analyst, to have joined us and to have talked to us about the situation that is emanating as far as the security of our country is concerned through or from the Afghan soil, and how important it is for not only for the Afghan interim government to take the requisite measures, but also those guarantors of the Doha agreement to also pressurize Afghanistan to do the needful. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. Let's come to our second story, and our second story concerns the 4th Global Climate and SDG Synergy Conference that is being held as we speak. Romina Khurshid Alam is representing Pakistan there. A lot of talk about Pakistan's sustainable climate action and synergies between the Paris Agreement and the 2030 agenda are being talked about. More in the following report.
Climate change is supercharging extreme climate extremes round the world. A scorching weather gripped 3 continents, whipping up wildfires, torrential rains, and threatening to topple temperature records. The heat waves come after the EU's climate monitoring service said the world saw its hottest June on record last month. Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable countries affected by climate change and has been ranked among the top 10 by the German Watch Institute. In order to evoke sustainable response to climate change-driven havoc, Pakistan at the United Nations has called for a coordinated effort to assist the vulnerable nations of Asia-Pacific region in confronting the climate change-related challenges like floods, heat waves, water shortages, and melting glaciers. While speaking at the 4th Global Conference on Strengthening Synergies between the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in New York, Prime Minister's Special Assistant Romina Khurshid Alam called for coordinated efforts to tackle climate crisis. Pakistan recognizes the critical importance of aligning its efforts with the Paris Agreement to the temperatures limited to 1.5 degrees and the 2030 UN Development Agenda. Greater vulnerability demands greater responsibility, accountability, and action. The ongoing climate change phenomenon and its adverse effects have alarmed the world to take steps to conserve nature and ensure its sustainability for the future generations.
Now, to discuss more on this, we've been joined by Afia Salam. She's an environmentalist and a renowned one at that. Afia, thank you very much to have joined us. Afia, when it comes to this important 4th Global Climate SDG Synergy Conference, how important is this synergy, whether it be between the Paris Agreement and the 2030 agenda, whether it be between the countries that are directly being affected by climate change?
So, thank you very much again for having me. The main thing is that synergies are the element which are why I see no substantial progress in the climate project. So it's very important for countries to get together and bring together all the agreements that have been made in the past and move forward whatever commitment.
All right. Afia, I'd like to also understand, why is our region, why is South Asia so vulnerable to climate change, whether it be Pakistan, whether it be our neighborhood countries, especially now in these rains, we also see other countries in the region that are being directly affected by it, including Pakistan. Why are we so vulnerable?
So, there are three different things. It's a very broad question, so obviously I can't exactly answer in one sentence. One is the geographic location. Somehow, most of the impacts are being in this area. We have some of the high ranges, The glacier, the of Karakoram Hindu is called the third pole of the world, which has the maximum number of glaciers outside the two poles. And those are melting. And those are going to be having impact on this entire region. And this entire region is actually inhabited by a quarter of humanity. So when you are talking about impact of climate change, it is the natural incidents that occur because of that, but the impact also is measured whereby the how vulnerable are those countries. Poverty levels are much higher, so that's the historical fact we carry. Our development trajectory has not reached to a point where we can sort of ensure ourselves against these impacts. We do not have the resources at this disposal. We do not have the access to the kind of technology that countries outside the global south have, in which they can do vulnerability mapping and land use planning is more in sync with nature. Don't go and sit in paths of disasters. Areas we haven't.
Afi, I'd like to interrupt you. We are not able to hear you properly or your points of views on different issues. We are going to try to call you back so that the conversation is not only more lively but more, we can understand it better, because a lot of issues concerning technicalities with your conversation on Skype. So we are going to try to contact you again. In the meantime, the 4th Global Climate and SDG Synergy Conference, as we speak, is being convened by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This conference, of course, is conducted in association with the 2023 HLPF. It provides delegations the opportunity to reflect the ongoing review of progress on achieving the SDGs. Mainly important SDGs concerning climate change are the 6, 7, 9, 11 and 17. All of this is being discussed in a wider context of the interlinkages between these goals and the global climate change that is affecting many regions, specifically the South Asian region. The conference is also going to take stock of the progress on the synergistic action at different levels and will shed light on the key findings and messages from the work of the expert group on climate and SDG synergies. The Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, in a recent address on his 2023 priorities, did say that climate change was the 21st century's greatest opportunity to drive forward all the sustainable development goals. Now, also research has shown and has been showing us that aligning actions on climate and SDGs globally can yield up to 26 trillion US dollars before the year 2030 in economic gains, produce over 65 million new green jobs and save approximately 7 million premature deaths per year. These are huge numbers, important numbers, and we need to synergize our efforts in order to achieve these numbers. The research has also shown that, as Pakistan has also said, that a coordinated effort is needed to assist the vulnerable nations of Asia Pacific region in confronting the climate change related challenges like floods, heat waves, water shortages and melting glaciers. Afia Salam joins us back. Thank you very much, Afia. I hope we can understand each other better now. I was trying to ask you, and I'd like to rephrase that question. Some 750 million people in South Asia have been affected by at least one natural disaster, whether it be floods, whether it be earthquakes, whether it be heat waves. As far as data that has been compiled, why the World Bank is concerned, why is South Asia so vulnerable?
So one reason, as I was mentioning earlier, and can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So one reason which I would like to keep aside, which is of earthquakes, is something that, our geography impacts that. The way we are placed, where we are placed in the world, that is one reason we really cannot do anything about. The other reason where climate change impacts can be felt are because we are in the third pole. We have the third pole in our north of our country, of our region, which is the area where the highest number of glaciers are located outside the two poles. So global warming is impacting those glaciers. We have them melting, and melting right now means floods, but in the long term, if you look at modeling, it's horrific that these are the storages of fresh water for this entire region. And once the glaciers have gone, there is no source for fresh water. That is going to be a challenge of the future. Right now, we are dealing with floods. This region is experiencing extreme heat. So are other areas now. They are coming to terms with the climate change. So when you ask why are we more vulnerable, it has two aspects. One is human, the other is natural. One is the impacts of natural disasters, which have, that whole set of events that have been triggered by climate change, by global warming. And the other is the level of development, rather the lack of development that people of this area have, where a quarter of humanity lives in poverty. Large number of them live in poverty. They do not have the resources to sort of shield themselves from the impact. And that is where, when we look at the SDGs and compliances and the need to meet those goals in a collaborative manner, was your first question, that how do we get those synergies? So synergies are the missing elements, and that is why we are not really seeing impacts, positive impacts or adapt to help the people adapt to climate change. And unless and until we can lift the people out of poverty, we can transition onto resources which are just, which are clean and green. We have early warning because we cannot roll back climate change because we are not the contributors to it, the countries which are the contributors, unless and until they take the action which can stop the rising temperature in global temperature. Climate change is given. So that is not going to be rolled back. And what we need are early warning systems. We need to lift our people out of poverty, off the dangerous areas, the vulnerable areas. We need systems, we need technology, and we need resources to help these people stay out of the path of disaster, or rather bounce back. Of vulnerability, resilience in tandem with that. And unfortunately, why we are vulnerable is because we do not have that capacity to bounce. And a lot of elements are needed to bring that in. And all the SDGs actually lead from one to the other to enable us to reach that state where we can call ourselves to be sort of climate secure.
Now, adherence to the SDGs is also extremely important because there is also a direct or indirect link to peace and stability in the entire world. When you look at food security or the lack therein, or displacement and disease that are caused by effects of climate change, do you feel that the important countries in the global north understand the complications and the long-term effects of climate change?
It's the people, whether they understand or not, it boils down to the political will of the rulers of the country, the global north, who have the of taking the steps which can roll back climate change, or it can stop it at a stage where it will not cause more disaster. But if you look at all the new reports that are coming out, the scientists are talking of 6 degrees. To the maximum, the rise. Here we have been talking about 1.5, which is now something that I don't think it's even in the discussion anymore. So the global north is, understanding may be there. The pockets of global north are being hit. Look at the forest fires in Canada, which impacted not just Canada, but the smoke and the ash and the pollution. It impacted countries in just immediately to the south of it, much further away. So unless and until people in the street are able to bear pressure on those rulers to take those decisions, I don't see that happening. Or the global north can collectively, at those forums where these meetings are held, where these dialogues are held, can bear down upon them to actually take some concerted decisions and then keep to them. You see, we have these forums where a lot of commitments are made. And once they leave those places, then you don't see those commitments being met. That has been the problem of the conversation of the UNFCCC, of the COPs, that you don't see that will to move to that direction. And unless that happens, SDGs are just a platform or just a conversation point for global north. For
The
South
actual important thing is application, is action, all those plans, all the SDGs, all the pledges that are being made, that is not happening as we speak. Of all the important moods that are being held, whether it is this one, whether it is the COPs, whether it is the other moods, if the action isn't taken despite the pledges, then what is the use of even making those pledges if you can't translate them into actions? Food insecurity is so important, in these days when you look at conflicts happening and climate change. Grapple together, they form a very strong nexus of food insecurity. Isn't it important for the world at least to try to grapple with this insecurity and take some concrete measures?
obviously, that there's no other answer to it, that it is important. But are they doing enough? And when we talk about food insecurity, if you look at only in Pakistan's context, we also look at what food. A quarter of our population is malnourished. And it is not just because of the lack of access to food. Even those who have access to food don't have the access to the kind of nutrition that is needed to pull them out of the level of malnourishment as well as stunting. So we are grappling with two very, very difficult and great threats to us. Because a large number of that are being at our population graph. So that means we are going to have a lot more malnourished and stunted people in our country. And I'm only here talking about Pakistan. Global South, the levels of poverty, and also in Africa, if you look at the contexts that are there, they're just exacerbating all these issues.
Now, Afia, also I'd like to understand, one thing is food insecurity, another is water scarcity also, that a lot of countries, including Pakistan, might be grappling with in the years to come. What necessary measures need to be taken now before it's too late? Because we also see the melting of the glaciers that you've highlighted a few minutes back in this very show. What needs to be done?
So there are several fixes that are there. They're not, they are actually related, but because they are not being looked at as a related concept, population growth is the one biggest threat to all resources. So that has to be addressed. So how that is going to be addressed, how it is going to be planned, that has a very intangible element of behavior change, of advocacy. We haven't really done all that great a job at that. So we need to focus on how to address those issues. There's malnourishment is linked to that, because then there isn't enough food to go around. You're talking about water scarcity. That's a huge issue. And that's there, again, there are two elements. There's one tangible element of, securing our water rights and water storages. But what about water equity, water distribution? There are many, most of our issues with water where we see scarcity is because of the inequities of distribution rather than the availability of water. So we have to address those. There has to be justice, environmental justice. I know we talk about climate justice, but environmental justice within our own borders, within our own country also is very, very important. And it may address many of the things that we see as being scarce. Maybe they are just not in the grasp of the people who need to have them. They are being, there is this elite capture which creates a resource inequity. So we have to look at it in that context. Now, one very positive thing that has happened finally after a lot of effort by the government of Pakistan as well as the custodians of that program is the grant that has been given to Pakistan for Recharge Pakistan, which is the one nature-based solution that all parties had agreed to, that this is our what we need for our water security. Because earlier it was all brick and mortar and infrastructure, but we do know that that doesn't really work, that doesn't help. It has long-term, downstream, very negative impacts. We have lost our delta because of it, impacting over 600,000 people. So Recharge Pakistan, once it is operational, you will see a change for the better, inshallah. I think I rest a lot of hope in programs like Recharge Pakistan, like Living Indus, because they are close to nature. They are things that people can understand. It's not just something, knocked together in some ivory towers. It's close to the ground. It's a beneficial program.
All right.
So
Finally,
addressing what
Afia, I'd like to
we
understand,
do that
is
thing is,
Pakistan's climate action plan, in your point of view, Afia, is Pakistan's climate action plan aligning its efforts with the Paris Agreement as far as the limiting the temperatures to 1.5 degrees is concerned?
So, I mean, Pakistan already emits less than 1% of the global carbon. The global emissions. Despite that, Pakistan is a signatory to the Paris Agreement. Despite that, Pakistan has also presented its revised NDCs, in which the commitments were aligned with the realities, and Pakistan is committed and on track to that. So what we need to do is to keep a check on that, whether we are on track. Right now, we had committed to the word that we are going to peak. So let's not knock down that peak. We need to lift we have a right to lift our people out of poverty. We have a right to development and to some prosperity, which other countries have already reached. And then the tapering down till 2050 is a commitment that Pakistan hasn't really gone back on. So so at least let us go the path where we have presented before the world and they've agreed. These are voluntary commitments. Nobody has forced us to do it, and yet being a citizen of the world, Pakistan has still committed despite not being a contributor to climate change. So I think people need to realize that.
I think that's very important for people who are in the right, offices across the world in the global north to understand and to recognize Pakistan's efforts in this very regard in order to fight climate change, where despite the fact that, as you have said, Pakistan is emitting less than 1% of carbon. Thank you so very much, Afia, to have joined us, to have talked to us about these synergies between the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda and the mood that is happening under the auspices of the United Nations, where Rumina Khurshid Alam is present. Let's come to our last two stories. The first concerns the situation post the rains, and of course the monsoon rains that are continuing. As far as River Satluj is concerned, 20 villages in Pakpatan and Arifwala have been evacuated as the River Satluj is experiencing a moderate flood. Although the water recedes, but there is of course the but the fact remains that there is a certain danger of moderate to medium flood happening in different areas of Pakistan. And it is for that the government, the PDMA, the NDMA, along with our armed forces, are collectively working 24/7 in order to help all those who are in the low-lying areas, who are could be susceptible to the effects of these incessant rains. A total of 408 rescuers, 135 boats, life jackets, wireless sets have been engaged in rescue operations in the areas adjacent to the Sutlej River. Not good news for Azad Jammu and Kashmir also, where an alert has been issued regarding the possibility of floods in various parts of the region. Let's hope for the best and try to help as many people as possible who are experiencing the effects of the floods. And finally, let's come to the important grain deal that was signed between Ukraine and Russia way back in 2022. Turkey, in fact, was a moderator for that deal. What has happened is that Russia has backed out of that deal that allowed the export of Ukrainian grain. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said that Russia will not renew the pact right now, saying it has been terminated, quote unquote. Russia for some time has been complaining that it is being prevented from adequately exporting its own foodstuff. Peskov cited that objection as the reason for pulling out of the deal. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, has said that the main objective of the deal, supplying grain to the countries in need, has not been realized, quote unquote, and saying that Russia has a lot of problem sending its own grains to other countries. Peskov nevertheless has left the door open to reviving this deal in the future. He has said that Russia will comply as soon as the Russian part of the deal is completed. So let's hope that this deal is revived again in another form or in the same form soon, because there are a lot of countries in the developing world that need that grain, as was decided by both the countries and the mediation of Turkey. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. See you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.